Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, August 30th, and this is episode 11 of Conscious Conversations. Good for Nothing is our title. Go ahead and grab coffee, grab water, do what you need to do, and we'll get started in just a few moments as soon as I post on the appropriate channels. Would love to know who is with us this morning and anything in particular that's on your mind that you'd like for us to discuss. If it is not related to the topic, we are definitely here to make sure that we discuss together. Good morning. Seeing a few people joining us. You know, this particular topic, in terms of both talking about living with intention and talking about good for nothing, is something that has maybe been peppered through a lot of the episodes that we have done thus far. You know, it's interesting. Shantae and I were having a conversation yesterday about the fact that we're already at episode 11. You know, it's very fascinating how quickly these things kind of compound on one another. You know, we were discussing how Reedy and Red made it over 300 episodes very, very quickly. And this is on episode 11. Now, before we get into today's episode, I really do want to hear from you. What are the things that you take from these conversations? What are some of the things that you would like for us to explore maybe a little bit more? We are looking to potentially take a little bit of a break before we come back so that we can reformat this in a way that's really effective for you, making sure that you're getting the most out of these conversations, whether that's having special guests, doing things in terms of interviews, maybe being a little bit mindful in terms of the format. So hearing from you is very important. You know, there's a small but mighty group of you that join me every single Tuesday, and your opinion matters. You know, we sit here a bit in a silo, making sure that we're putting out content that we think that you would like. And we want to hear from you. What are some of the things that we've discussed over the last 10 episodes that you've really enjoyed? Maybe we take a deeper dive or something that we can do there. So again, good morning, good morning. Say good morning, good morning. Let's see, Tracy. Yes, long time no see. We're actually not too far from you, so we might have to make it out to the farm to say hello to you and everybody. Good morning. Good morning, Doug. Good morning, Aunt Kelly. I love it when family can join us. You know, so good for nothing. First of all, let's take a moment to go back and think about the purpose of life. And I know that's a little light for this morning, and yet we've talked about this before, that the purpose of life is to live with intention. It is to be good and to do good. And ultimately, the hard part is all of the other stuff that gets in our way, the distractions, the family drama, the thing with finances, being the role that you play for other people in your world, your job, keeping up with the Joneses. So many things potentially get in our way of being good and doing good. And somewhere along the way, probably amplified by social media and some other things, that the idea of doing good for nothing has somehow meant that you are not succeeding at life, right? Everything has to be a side hustle. If you've got an extra 20 minutes, let me show you how to make $100. We've monetized every single element of the human experience that it makes anyone who is not doing something for financial gain feel as if they don't belong in this world, or they don't necessarily have what it takes to be quote unquote successful. And I remember I was having this conversation last week, or a portion of this conversation with Angela, which I hope she's with me this morning. Good morning, Kelly. Good morning, Roger. And we were talking about scheduling good for nothing time. You know, Doug and I went to a Zazen Buddhist temple not too long ago, in which we were able to do Zazen meditation. And the concept of the Zazen meditation being good for nothing is the idea of being able to sit for no particular ulterior motive, right? To sit, to be able to be present, to be able to be aware. And I was thinking about it, and although Zazen has a very specific way of doing things, you know, you move counterclockwise and you bow to the room, and you know there's a bell to start and a bell to end, and there's a lot of things that are involved in terms of facing the screen, the shoji screen door. Yet I was thinking about how this idea of sitting has been a part of many cultures. You think about the Taoist sitting is, again, being able to just sit with yourself and be mindful of your surroundings, to be mindful of the little things that is God in a lot of places. I think, Doug and I are here in the South. We're in Appalachia, right? And so being in Appalachia, you can see there's a lot of rocking chairs. And that idea of sitting in a rocking chair for a period of time, maybe you're spending time with company, maybe you're having good conversation, or maybe you're just sitting. You are doing nothing, right? And so I want to ask you, when was the last time that you've scheduled time that was good for nothing? To be present, to be aware, to maybe slow down from the hustle and bustle of everything, to enjoy some of the things around you. The flowers, the bees that are buzzing around, all of the birds that are making noises, the 4 million cicadas that it feels like are all around you. Just really being present. And I promise that there is a reason that I'm asking this question. But go ahead, let's get some interaction. When was the last time that you've had some good for nothing time? Let's see. Good morning, Alicia. She's joining us from California, so she's opening up those eyes. Thank you for being with us. Good morning. Wanting to make sure that we're having this conversation of being mindful. And so mindfulness, that term gets thrown around a lot. I want to be mindful. I want to be more mindful. Mindfulness is being present right in this very moment. Being with me for the next 30 minutes or however long we have together. To be able to push away some of the things that might feel like they are very, very important and they just can't wait. The idea that everything is an emergency, or taking it a step further, a little bit deeper, is that for some people, the emergence, that need to respond to others, is somehow a validation of being needed. And for many of us, that need to be needed is the thing that is a fuel. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't be needed, but it's the understanding of how are we good with ourselves? How are we good in that present moment? And so when we can be intentional, there is a blog that we had done a while back that's called Being Impeccable with Your Now. And I'll make sure that we share that out later today and that you all have access to it. But this concept of being impeccable with your now takes that burden of being perfect away. And it says to yourself that I'm going to make a choice today, or I'm going to make a series of choices today based on my relationships, based on my financial situation, based on the knowledge that I have today, not comparing myself against others or the version of me that could be better 6 months from now, but saying if I look at the rest of my morning, and maybe I've got 2 hours before my first obligation with others, how can I be as intentional and purposeful with that time as possible? Now notice I said intentional and purposeful, not productive. You're not a machine that just has to put out zeros and ones. It's being intentional with that time. And then you move on to the next opportunity of making a decision. And being impeccable in that present moment, you ask yourself, what is the highest and best use that I can do? And being intentional with this time based on my resources, my relationships, my financial situation, my mental capacity, my own physical energy. And then when you continue to do that in the present moment, what you realize is there is an accumulation of your striving for excellence. Well, if at the end of the day, you've had a series of choices that were made by being intentional, by being purposeful, by striving for excellence, is that a bad day? And then you take this concept and you move it into tomorrow, and you're present in those little present moments. And you take that. And so this concept is moving away from being goal-oriented and being process-oriented. There's a wonderful book that's called Chop Wood, Carry Water. And it talks a little bit about this in different elements of life, that essentially it is to be present in those present moments, to have an awareness and being mindful in those present moments. Not, again, comparing yourself to others or comparing yourself to your future self, but rather striving for excellence in those present moments. And I promise you that if a year from now you look back and you say, I have made a series of intentional and purposeful decisions in the present based on my resources and my relationships and my financial situation. There is nothing but being content with the progress that you've made, being fulfilled with the things that you have done, and being able to leave them where they are without feeling a certain kind of weight of anything other than striving for excellence over perfection. So let's look at some things that are here. Each of these things, and Tracy talking about some mindfulness moments and doing something good for nothing. She says each morning she drinks her coffee with the hummingbirds. I love that. We have hummingbird feeders all across the property, and now we're bringing other critters this way. But really being able to see some of those ruby throats and things that bring so much joy to the family, absolutely. One of the things that Kelly had asked is, question for you, how do you come up with the content you speak about each time? I'll definitely get to that, Kelly, in just a moment. J9 had some things here. She said, I did not plan it, but yesterday a friend texted me early for a ride on her boat on a slow river. And I'm not even going to, your northeastern pronunciations of things, I'm not even going to just butcher it because I'm going to be ripped to shreds. So I will do a Hooked on New England's phonic with you, J9, here soon. So we just pattered around doing nothing. My phone was in the watertight bag and it was just settling. All I could say was life by design. And I love that. J9, first of all, I want to say you should be so proud of all of the work that you've done this year. I'm very thankful to be a part of the journey with you, and so glad that you are moving on to a stretch goal with some of the things that you're there, and a perfect example of someone who has leaned into doing the activities. And with the things that are going on in your personal life, or the resources that you have, or some of the things that are there, being intentional of going, these are the activities that I know that if I do them, that the results become a byproduct. So now to Kelly's question, how do I come up with the content? Usually about 12 minutes before I go on. I'm just kidding, but not really. Sometimes, including today, right? Today is completely there. I have no notes. I have no quotes. This was something that I had been meditating on. It's things that I have been working on. It is conversations that I have with coaching clients, or quite frankly, it's a feeling in terms of topics that I think might be relevant. Shantae and I, of course, go back and make sure that we don't repeat ourselves, because a lot of my life feels like Groundhog Day. Yet there are these moments where there's a collective consciousness. There is a collective concern with the people that are in my world that I feel maybe a little bit more in tune to, and feel like a message or being able to focus on something might be able to touch those people in that moment. Bringing that to you on a Tuesday morning, hoping that it touches you in a specific way that you can carry into your week. So that's my PhD in bullshit response, but in true fashion, it really has always been that way. You've spent many times with me for Reedy and Red. You've spent times with me for Power Up. Kelly, I think about how many mornings we've spent together, whether it's online or in person. And more often than not, those things really do come from a place of, this is the things that I read. These are the things that I meditate on. These are the things that I write about. And so being very intentional in my own personal practice, my spiritual practice of listening to myself. And let me be abundantly clear, I don't have this all figured out, not even remotely close. I can be all zen here and then have a complete, anger attack later this afternoon. There are things that happen, and so it's the reality of coming back to, and I love this idea that it's a spiritual excavation, right? There's something inside of us. It's like a deeply planted fossil that we have to kind of dig at and remove, and sometimes we take axes to it, and other times we take brushes and being very sensitive. But these topics, this thing that is deeply rooted inside of all of us, it's something that speaks to all of us, is something that we get to spend every single day, if we choose to, going a little bit deeper and finding that thing that has already been buried deep inside of us, right? It's not some journey outside of your body. I know that we use that language of spiritual journey because it's something that happens over time. Yet I truly like to believe of it as an excavation. It's something deep inside of us that we hope to uncover by removing all of the layers, removing all of the stickers that are between us and that thing that is also us. So thinking about intentional and always looking at, Kelly, you're always spot on for what I'm feeling, thinking about, and it's like Google listening to me. We have not figured out that technology just yet, or I haven't, at least, in terms of spying on all of you, but give me time. I'm just kidding. But really, making sure that we're having these conversations. My job for a very long time is productivity. Many of the people that I have a blessing to be around, I hope feel this way, but if not, then it's the conspiracy that I have in my head. That is, we talk about making a lot of money. We talk about achieving goals. We talk about building businesses. But I'm not your guy if that's all that you care about. If we don't come back to understanding why we do what we do and the purpose of business is to fund that life of intention, then making sure that we know what that life of intention looks like. Again, even for myself, I get lost in the sauce, as I don't know how great that saying is, but that idea of even myself, I find sometimes getting lost in putting the wool over your eyes and just putting your head and your nose to the grindstone and working for the sake of working and just amassing more money so that you can do more things and you can buy more things, and somehow you lose yourself. And it's one of those that if we listen to the social media things and we listen to the digital ads, I remember reading somewhere that there's some 10,000 digital ad placements that we get bombarded with every single day. And so if you think of, if I'm listening to the news and the TV's always on or the radio is always on, and I'm able to kind of just fill the void of space or alone time with myself, with the chatter of someone else, when was the last time that I listened to my own inner voice? And for some of us, it could be months and or years before we've had an opportunity to sit there. And even to that point, sometimes when we are alone at night, instead of listening to that voice because we don't necessarily like what it talks about, for some of us, we numb that through versions of numbing mechanisms, whether that's alcohol or drugs or conversation with others, again, because we don't like the silence that's there. But I want to challenge you that if you have an opportunity to be able to sit, and it's time that is good for nothing other than being present and being aware, even if it's for a small period of time, that I hope that is a practice that you're able to bring into your every single day so that you can come back to this place. You can come back to this conversation and not even having my voice there, but listening to your own voice on what is meaningful for you, what is purposeful for you, what does being good and doing good mean for you in your own definition, on your own path through this time. And realizing the impact that you make on others, I think is one of those things. And being intentional is, one more step of this topic is something that is intentional influence. This is something that I was writing about last week and was really hoping to expand upon. And so I haven't had an opportunity to expand too far on it, but I'll do it here live, which is realizing that there is an intentional influence. You have influence whether you realize it or not. And a perfect example of that, and I have my aunt Kelly on here, is the impact that she has made on me. I remember there's this saying that she used to say when I was young, which was she would give the shirt off of her back as long as she had a bra on. And that has been 100% the way that she moves through life. She always gives herself to the people that are in her world, and truly that has had an imprint on me in the way that I want to show up for others. And there's someone very close to us in our family, Athena, who had recently passed away, and thinking about her influence that she had on Doug, someone that maybe she spent less than 10 hours total in the decade that we have been together, and the influence that she had made on him, always being loving, always being accepting, always taking the time to be present in a conversation. And you don't realize the influence that you make on people. And if you do realize the influence that you make on people, then it's how can I be intentional every time that I'm having a conversation with someone not dismissing them, not making them feel less than, being 100% present in the conversation. And you might not be able to control the way that that person feels or the things that are involved or how they come away from that conversation, but you were intentional in the impression that you made. And you were intentional in the way that you allowed that influence to impact that individual person. And it's a very fascinating practice to go into, not only being intentional with your own time, but being intentional with every single interaction you make with other people. And I know that for some of you, in the back of your head, you're like, oh, God, that sounds tiring. I have to be mindful and thoughtful. But what's so fascinating about this is if I go into a conversation and I want to be love and light, and I know that that's thrown around all over the place and it's, on the side of coffee mugs and things, but to be love and light for someone is to be loving kindness to any person that you meet, because it takes just as much effort to be as loving as it does to be hateful or spiteful or any of those other emotions. And to be light is to be a positive impact. Now, you don't have to be fake. You don't have to be chipper. You don't have to be high energy. God knows I'm never going to be described as the life of the party. But to be light is to not be darkness for those people in their interaction. And if you can move through this world being good, doing good, and on any interaction that you have with others, being love and light, well, to me, I think that that is what success is supposed to be. Not how many likes you have or how many followers you have or any of those things. And as I had a wonderful sparring with someone last week who didn't particularly like some of the things that I had said, this is my opinion. And I'm allowed to have my own. And if you're with me because you enjoy it, well, then fantastic. If you're with me because I'm better than Good Morning America, fantastic. Whatever it might be, the idea of being intentional and finding time to sit with yourself and to have time that is good for nothing, no material gain, no crossing the street to make your career better. It'll be fascinating how it has an impact on you and your world. So I'd love to shut up for a moment, take a sip of tea, and hear some comments. So what are you hearing? What are you feeling? How are you able to take part of this conversation and carry it in with you through the rest of this week? Let's see. Sean said, I always say people tend to dwell on the negative because the good is always around, so they forget about it. As easy as a hi, a thank you, a bite to eat. Any job is a great job, just life itself. I really do love that. Let's see. Doug said, Kelly Fitton, A, they both are, and B, it's all about being aligned as a collective. Absolutely, and realizing that even though each one of us is going through our own things, we all have our struggles. And Doug, whether it was misquoted or not, we were doing some research on that quote that you posted last night, which is accredited towards the German philosopher Nietzsche. I don't necessarily know if it was his. There was something about it potentially being by Goodall. But if you would, could you please put in the comment section what that quote was that you and I were discussing last night? And so thinking about some of the things that are here, I know that you all are with me. I'm still feeling the space, which means that I'm not able to drink my tea. What are you hearing? What's resonating with you in this conversation? Gotta love the delay of Facebook Live. Come on, put your coffee down, type away if you're on your phone, say hello, what are you hearing, what are some ahas? Remember that when we ask for ahas, when we ask for the interaction, it's not just so that, Facebook goes, look, people like what you're talking about. It really is because it allows us to cement the things that we're hearing and putting them into action. We're able to carry those with us into the week. If you just listen to something versus if you listen to something and you write it down, you will retain a significant amount more, and I'm not going to just throw out some random number without research, but I do know that you retain a significant more when you write things down, and then of course you retain even more when you go back and review what you had written down and make a plan of action, whether that is to carry those things into your present moment or whatever that might look like. Um, Thank you, Doug. So Doug put in that quote that, again, is largely accredited towards Nietzsche, but I'm not 100% sure. But we're going to give credit to know that it was neither Doug's quote nor my quote. And that is, to live is to suffer, but to survive is to find meaning in one's suffering. And that's the idea of, you have the intention, if you will, to choose a good day or a bad day, to choose suffering or to choose non-suffering, to remove yourself from some of the things that are there. And again, I can preach it, not saying that it's 100% internalized. I share it with you, so that I'm not talking to myself out loud and I look crazy, but anything that really I'm also bringing in terms of topics. These are things that I am having a conversation with myself. You just happen to be on the other side of the camera. So, really being intentional about understanding that not everything is Heart, Stars, and Horseshoes. Not everything is Virgin River or the Hallmark Channel, right? There are moments that are not full of necessarily joy, or they're not exciting and the adrenaline's not rushing and it's not Instagram worthy, or it's not anything to write home about. And those are the moments of challenging, to be able to sit with yourself and use that reprieve of not always being on, to check in with yourself, to pour into your own cup, to make sure that you are in aligned spiritually with what you need to do a little excavation, to do a little digging, right? So let's see. J9 said, thinking about being intentional about my interactions that are outside of my business will be my focus this week. I love that, J9. Right. And I remember there was this individual that I was teaching a class, and there was an individual. She was a wonderful woman. I will say a mature woman who was getting into a second or third career. And also English wasn't her first language. So there were a lot of things necessarily stacked against. I've done plenty of trainings with individuals that have started a new career after the age of 40. And it's very interesting to watch. Those individuals came from being at the top of whatever field they were in. They knew it. They had it memorized. They can do it forwards and backwards. And then they get into real estate, or they get into sales, or they do something different. And they get frustrated because they're so used to knowing something, to that 10,000 hour of mastery of where they could just do it subconsciously. And here they are trying something new, and they're not being instantly successful, and it's infuriating. Well, you take that, and then you take language barrier, communication barrier. There are lots of things. So she would come to me, and I would realize that my first reaction was, oh God, right? Being intentional was realizing that she was my yoga. She was my practice. To be able to be intentional in those moments, and to be love and light for that purpose, for that person, and for that purpose. And to realize that here was someone who trusted in me to ask me questions, and to hope that I can guide her through this process. And I could either completely dismiss her because she's frustrating and she's slowing me down and I have something else, something better to do, or I could be intentional. And I can use this as an opportunity to practice my compassion, to practice my patience, to be love and light, and to be intentional and be 100% present in that moment. And that is just what J9, what you're talking about, is I'm sure we've got clients that it's like, oh God, I don't want to pick up that phone. I don't want to make that phone call. Or there's people that you've shown houses to that were on, house number 51, and they're very indecisive. Using those opportunities to be your practice and your interactions and to be love and light is one of the wonderful things that we can carry with us. And that's the idea that life doesn't happen to you. Life happens for you, means that any of these challenges, struggles, the suffering, right? The meaning of that suffering to survive is also to be intentional and present in those interactions. So I love that. Shantae went ahead and put the Be Impeccable with Your Now blog in a bit.ly link there in the comment sections if you would like to read that. Again, it's an oldie but a goodie. I think we put that out about a year ago. If you're reading it on your phone, I'm sorry. Our mobile version is a little antiquated, but we are working on getting that up and going. But it is a wonderful one there, though. Let's see. Isaiah said, what resonates with me is that although success can be rated in many different ways, The light, love, and service that we give others is the most accurate measure of my success. That for me can get lost when it comes to financial or business success, unfortunately. And Isaiah, I think that's all of us, because there is this linear construct that has been made through school or through life, right? You pass this class, you pass this test, you move on to the next one. And then once you're finished with that, you're supposed to go to college. And after college, although that narrative is shifting in this generation, but that idea of after that, then you go and you get a job, and then you get a better job, and then you buy a house, and then you buy a bigger house, and then you build a family, and you build a bigger, an even bigger house, right? And then you die, and then you downsize, and then you really downsize. That is that linear construct of what we have. And so then success is, well, if you did well last year, you got to do more this year, because if you don't do more this year, right, you grow or you die, is somehow this idea of double or nothing, greed and the consumption of more. And what do you mean, that car is 5 years old? Go get a new one. There's a better version, right? I'm sure they're going to announce a new iPhone here pretty soon because it's holiday season. So always being able to go, sure, there are some outside things, and I might want a new phone or whatever the new thing is, but I need to make sure that I'm also taking that time to listen to my inner voice, not just the marketing dollars that are being pumped through the tube. They don't call it a tube anymore, but I'm 400 years old. Okay, so, definitely want to make sure that this is something that you can carry with you. We are debating on format. So just as I pitched in the beginning, would love to hear from you. What do you like about these conversations? Do you like this particular format? We're talking about wanting to bring some other things, maybe some guest speakers, maybe doing some interviews, taking a version of this and doing it on a podcast for those of you that like to listen to podcasts that don't necessarily join us live on video or want to sit down and watch something for 30 minutes. But we want to hear from you because, this content is important. And at the same time, the entire reason that Conscious Conversations was born was out of the uncertainty of the market and listening to some of the things that were going on in your world. And making sure that we're bringing things that allow you to also become centered and kind of be intentional with your own self. So thank you so much for joining me this morning. I really do appreciate it. If you have comments, continue to comment. We would love to be able to respond even after we're live. And I hope that you have a wonderful week. Goodbye, everybody.